All right. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to talk about how to build a sustainable remote career. My name is Leon Barnard. I'll talk a little bit more about myself later, but let's get into it. So let's say, for the sake of this presentation, this talk, that your objective is to build a career that is long-lasting and enjoyable, not a career to get rich quick or build an impressive resume or enable you to travel the world. Let's say that your objective, your reason for watching this, is to learn how to build a career that's long-lasting and enjoyable. All right, so if you're on board with that, how do you do that? Well, in short, you have to do your homework, a lot of homework. It takes a lot of work to find that. You have to do a lot of research and a lot of introspection. You have to know yourself, because after all, if you don't know what makes you happy, how can you find a job that helps you be happy? So, what we're going to go through today, I am going to talk about three components of sustainable careers that will keep you happy, hopefully, for as long as you want to be in that role. Those are the role, the industry, and the company. And then at the end, we will get into some tips for landing the job. I've interviewed a lot of people. I've applied for a lot of jobs, so I'll give you some tips that I've picked up. So let's ask ourselves this question: what is it that makes a career sustainable? So sustainable means long-lasting and enjoyable. Basically, how can you make your career make you happy, help you be happy, and that allows you to stick around? There's been a lot of layoffs lately, a lot of jobs and companies change. So how can you develop a career that you can stay in for a long time and that you feel good about? Um, I think really there are three main components of long-lasting and enjoyable careers. The first is the role. It's what you do. Maybe it's your job title. Are you an artist, a programmer, a data scientist, a marketer? What is the job that you were hired to do? The next is the industry that you work in, and that basically means the people that you serve as well as your competitors. Are you in the banking industry? The products that your company makes, often determines the industry. Are you in automotive manufacturing? Does your company make pet food, roadmap software? So a certain role could work in a variety of different industries. And vice versa. And then lastly, the company that you work for. That's where you work. That's who signs your checks, basically. That determines the culture, the structure. There's the same role can feel very different at companies if we're thinking through this lens of sustainability. And what's surprising, if we're really thinking about it through this lens of long-term happiness, I would say that what you do within the company, your role matters the least. Not that it doesn't matter at all. Of course, if you don't enjoy the work that you do, you won't be happy. But I don't think it plays as significant a role as most people expect. So I would say that the weight of each component, from smallest to biggest, is the role, the industry, and then the company. So why am I here talking about this? What experience do I have that's relevant? So I work for a software company called Balsamic. I've been with this company for 10 and a half years now, which is basically forever in company lifespans these days. The company itself has been around for 15 years. When I started, it was about 10 people. And now, even after 15 years, it's only 35 people. Some things that are unique about Balsamic: it's remote first. All of us work remotely, even though there is a small office that we opened only recently, but we work as if everybody is remote because most of the time they are. And so a lot of the thoughts that I have for this talk really come from that experience. Balsamic is also bootstrapped. We've received no outside funding. It's been profitable since day one. And it's really focused on longevity. We want to try to have a company that's going to be around in 100 years, which is kind of a unique thing for a software company. And like I said, we only have 35 employees. We're focused on slow growth, and so this means that our costs are low. We don't have a lot of expenses, we don't have a lot of overhead, nor do we have a lot of headcount. So that really lowers the pressure for us to grow at hyper speed, grow at all costs. So this particular topic has nothing to do with the work that I do at Balsamic, but it's something I really enjoy talking about. And being at a small, interesting company for 10 years has really given me a front row seat to a lot of interesting things. I've been a part of a lot of discussions. Being in a company like this allows everybody to kind of like contribute to the way that we work. So I've written other articles about this. It's just kind of a fun thing that I really enjoy talking about. Also on the Balsamic website, we've written some really good posts about how we run our company, why we run it the way that we do. There's also a newsletter where we give a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff about how we work. So now onto the good stuff. So let's talk about the impact of the role, the work that you do on your long-term happiness. So some things to look out for in a role. In each of these, it's really a series of questions to ask yourself. Some are about you, some require some more research. Some of them are really hard to answer. They require either a lot of deep thought or a lot of homework, a lot of research. One thing you can do if you're not already in the role, say you're looking to transition into a new role, or you're new to it, is interview people who are in that role to try to get some of these answers. So ask yourself, what is it about the role that appeals to me? Is it something that is very unique to that role, or are you confusing it with, say, the industry? I really want to work in AI, or I really want to, work in a particular industry. Is it really about the role, or is it about the industry? What is it that excites you about it? And then can you imagine yourself doing it 10 years from now? If we're thinking about longevity and sustainability, that really means, am I going to be happy 10 years from now doing working for the same company? Is it going to require a lot of effort for me to stay current? As somebody who's in my mid 40s, it makes me nervous thinking about possibly going into a new role in certain industries, as a programmer or something like that. Am I going to have to keep learning new skills? And for some people, that's great, that's fine, but that can be really hard. Or social media, for example, is changing very quickly. So if you're a social media marketer, is that something you can see yourself doing 10 years from now? What will social media look like in 10 years? Who knows? Will it even exist? Is it hard to stay current and relevant? And then also, how is this role evolving? Is it changing in a direction that you like? Is it becoming more automated? Can this easily be replaced by AI? That might not necessarily eliminate the role, but it might change it a lot. So are people kind of becoming more dissatisfied in the role, or is it changing in a way that you're not excited about? What are the trends that are happening in this role? And also, what is the trend and the demand for this role will be? Is there going to be a lot of competition, or will there be a lot of competition? Is this something that everybody's getting into now, or is it something people are getting out of? Is this a role that will still be in demand, that you'll still be able to get a job in or keep the job in 5 or 10 years? So as an example, if you don't know much about a role, that's where the research comes in. So here's an example of a newsletter I wrote a while ago. I work in user experience, and I wrote an article about how I see user experience evolving. Things that are staying the same, what's changing with the demand, the industries, is it growing, shrinking, how is it changing? So there's lots of examples out there. People like to think pieces about roles and industries and how they're changing. So like I said, if you don't feel like you can answer all of those questions, just go out and find it. It's all online, or talk to somebody who does it. It's not that hard. It just takes a lot of legwork. So now the industry. So the industry means, what products does your company sell, or the company you want to work for, and who do they sell to? Banking is an industry. Every bank is different. but they all exist in the same industry, and you need to be very aware of that and the trends in the industry and competitors, for example. So when you're thinking about what industry you would like to work in, or considering a company and you want to look at their industry, what questions do you want to ask? The first one is, how ripe is this industry for disruption? Think about the rental car industry. For a long time it was the same, but then you get into things like Uber and Lyft, and now companies like that are getting into rental cars and the gig economy and people renting out their own cars, and it's really changing a lot. So and that's happening all over the place. What about banking? Well, banking isn't going away anytime soon. It's very stable, but it's being a little bit disrupted by the internet. You don't necessarily need physical locations anymore. It doesn't require as much to get started. But on the other hand, it's highly regulated, and you need a lot of money to run a bank. So you can't just, it can't be a quick and easy startup. That's pretty risky. Also look at consolidation. Consolidation is happening a lot now. It seems like every company is either getting bought by another company, or there's mergers and acquisitions. Some of the smaller companies are failing. These days it kind of feels like in a lot of industries there can really only be a few big players. Think about airlines, banks, kind of the energy sector, brick and mortar stores. Those smaller players are getting bought out, or they're going bankrupt. A lot of them can only support two or three big players. All the big tech companies, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple, etc. There's not a lot of competition in those places, because you have these huge companies that are just kind of dominating. So how strong can your career be if you're not working for one of these, for example? What's going to happen? So here's a chart that I thought was really useful to understand, which is just basically how businesses work. And because this talk is all about longevity, it's about looking 10 years ahead, you have to understand the trajectory of companies and industries. There's a lot going on in this chart, so I'll kind of explain it carefully. So first you have the product or the industry company life cycle, which is introduction, growth, maturity, saturation, and decline. Usually growth happens very slowly, and then it kind of catches on and picks up really quickly. And then there's a plateau, and then it'll eventually decline. Some industries decline quickly, others decline very, very slowly. Banking, for example, is not going anywhere. And so it's important to understand, say, the company you're looking at, where are they in this curve? And the revenue that that industry is able to make kind of follows a similar curve, where it really goes up quickly. There's a lot of money to be made as that industry is expanding, kind of plateaus, and then once it's in decline, there's not as much money to be had. But one thing that's a little bit misleading is that not all the companies are impacted equally by that. So if you look at those other two, the yellow and the green, that kind of dip a little more quickly, the profit rate and the profit don't go up as quickly. And that's often because there become winners and losers. Like I said, that consolidation. So the overall rate of profit goes down. So in the beginning, anybody can get into that industry and make tons of money, but it's not going to last, because eventually it's going to get into this maturity phase where kind of the big players take the bulk of the money, and then the rest of them kind of fall out. So think about where your company is. Are they at one of these kind of inflection points where they're making a ton of money now, but the industry itself is kind of slowing down? So once you get to the saturation point, that's where things kind of stabilize. And so if you're in a company there that is doing really well, then maybe that's an okay place to be. But it's really important to do your research and think about the company that maybe you're interested in working in. Where are they on this chart? So finally, the company where you work. This has a really big impact on how you feel about your career, even if it's in a challenging industry. Like I said, a great company can be one that survives and lasts. It can be one of those big players. It can have things figured out so that it's able to stay profitable and successful and sustainable through all of these changes. So you don't necessarily need to find a company or industry or role that's not changing. Everything will change. Change is good. Change is okay. It's about trying to get ahead of that change or understand it. So first of all, the most important thing to ask, especially looking at a new company, is how do they make money? Are they actually making any money, or are they mostly spending money in the hopes of making money? Where are their customers coming from? Who are the customers? Where does the money come from? Is it what is the business model? Is it customers who are paying for a product or service? Is the money coming from advertisers? Think about Facebook and Twitter. You might think, oh, me as a user, I'm a customer of Facebook and Twitter, but that's not actually true. You don't pay for those services. The advertisers pay for those services. So the users, you are the product. Actually, the advertisers are paying for all of the people and eyeballs who are on that product, who are on that service, which isn't bad per se. Tons of companies and industries survive on advertising. That's fine. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be there, but what it means is that they're going to prioritize the advertisers over their end users, and that's not always doesn't always make for a good place to work. It's good to work somewhere that is very user-centric or product-led, where they really lead with the product, and their incentive is to build a really good product that lots of people like and enjoy using. Sometimes just selling something directly to somebody so that if they like it, they will buy it. I really like that kind of old school or traditional business model where your job is just to create a really good product that people will buy, and if you put in the work, then it will be successful. Another thing to look at is, how do they work? Are you going to be stuck in meetings all day and then have no time to do your real work and maybe be expected to do that at night or on the weekend? Who is the owner of the company? Is it some founders, some startup founders that are just kind of looking to get rich and looking to sell it? Are they invested in the company? Are they looking for their exit so they can retire early, or are they really committed to it? Look at how they do remote. A lot of companies do remote these days, which is fantastic. But it's important to understand how they do it. Are they remote first, where everybody is either remote or works as if they're remote? Are they kind of hybrid, where people go into the office a few days a week? Are they pushing for the return to office? Are they really trying to get back to? Are they saying, okay, COVID's over, we really want everybody back in the office? And you're kind of stuck out there feeling left out. How easy is the product to copy? How sustainable is the company? You can look at by, is their product something that's easy to copy? Can Amazon or Apple or Google make a similar product that's just going to take all of your sales? Is your product really just a feature that somebody else can copy? How does your company stand out? Twitter, for example, has really been going downhill ever since Elon Musk bought it. And their product is very easy to replicate, easy to copy. But what's hard to copy is their giant community, their audience. That's what matters. That is all the people who are currently on it. And that's why a lot of Twitter competitors have not really taken off, and why big companies like Facebook are getting into this game, because they're saying, oh, we already have the huge audience. So if you're working for a company that doesn't really have a strong differentiator, then that should make you a little bit nervous. And you can also look at, do people stick around? Why do people stay? Why do they leave? Are they getting burned out? Are they not being challenged? These are all good questions to ask that are really tough. So here's a nice chart that really helps understand things a little bit better. You have 4 categories of companies: the stars, question marks, cash cows, and poor dogs. And a lot of it really comes down to market share. So if your company is one of those winners, then it's probably going to be around for a while. So if they have a high market share, and the market is growing, then they're a superstar. They're doing awesome. If they have a high market share, and the industry is not growing that much, that's okay too. Maybe they're one of the big players. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, these huge banks. They're going to be around for a while, even if the market isn't changing that much. If you're in one of the other places where they don't have a lot of market share, then you don't really know. They might be an emerging company that's going to be one of those big companies in 5 years, but there's also a lot of risk. They might not. So it's definitely risky. So this is a good chart from Harvard Business Review that just shows how hard it is to lead a successful company. So let's say every relevant thing has about an 80% chance of succeeding. The company, all these things about the company. Well, that's great. You might think we have an 80% chance of success, but in order for a company to be successful, all of these have to work, which, if you multiply them all together, that makes a 17% chance of success. Being a successful company requires a lot of things to go right. Not necessarily all, but many or most of them, and a lot of them are outside of your control. So that's just how it is. Here's a good article from the founder of Gumroad, which was a very successful company that he thought would kind of be this huge company, and all the things that went wrong, both that were in his control and out of his control, which is a really good read to learn a little bit more. And then lastly, it's really important to understand how venture capital works. So venture capital is a series of bets. Working for a company that's funded by venture capital is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a really essential way to take off, but you have to realize the risk involved. So venture capital has a lot of money, and they're making a series of bets, and they know that they're going to lose some of them. So in order to balance that out, they need really, really high returns. So if you look at what good and great means to a venture capitalist, it means that they're going to get 10 or 20 times their investment within 5 years. And if you think about that, I mean, as an interest rate, that's huge. That's ridiculous. So if you're working for one of these companies and you want to survive, you have to generate so much money that you can take 10 times what you received in the beginning, give it to the person who gave you that money, and still be profitable. So that is a really useful lens just to look at how difficult it is, how successful a company really needs to be in order to kind of break free from the venture capital funding that they receive initially. It's kind of like a casino, and each company that takes VC money, that's one of the gamblers. But as we know, the house always wins. So the venture capital companies, they spread out their bets. So even if they lose a few, they're still going to win. So just bear in mind that if your company is taking VC money, they're spending that money before they've made it, and that's risky. So you have to think about what your tolerance for risk is, when working for a company like that. One kind of aside, say I'm looking for a job posting like this. Oh, it's for Figma. They're a growing company in a growing industry. They have a lot of market share, but this job is somebody working specifically around growth. So that means their job, even if it's a design job, is to get more and more and more people to buy and use the product. And that market may or may not be out there. But if you see listings like these that are specifically focused around growth, that means that this company is really feeling pressure to really grow their audience or user base. And they're kind of probably on this VC clock or this treadmill, and this company is probably going to look very different 5 or 10 years from now. So it's just something to think about. This is a really good blog post written by our CEO at Balsamiq. This idea that every company has a natural size, which is very much dependent on the market and the industry. And it's really about what is the problem this company is trying to solve. Are they a local pizzeria, or are they going to manufacture life-saving drugs? In the first case, they're not going to be $1 billion company because there's only so many people in that city or neighborhood who are going to buy their pizza. But if they're selling important medicine to people all over the world, that has the potential to be a huge company. So think about the company that you are working for, wanting to work for. Are they really being more ambitious than they should be? Are there enough people out there to support their revenue goals? And then another quick thing. So this is a site I'm not affiliated with, but it's called People First Jobs, and they kind of vet these companies to make sure that they have sustainable business models. So it's a good place to start. Okay, a few quick hacks for interviewing that I've learned in my time as interviewee and interviewer. And it's really all about how to stand out. So when I've interviewed people, what I found is that there are a lot of, probably maybe half the candidates are good. They've shown in some way that they can do the job, but you want to be the best candidate. And so you have to pitch yourself that way. The first thing to do, which is really kind of a hack, is to optimize your resume for robots. Most companies these days use these resume reading tools, and you really have to learn what to write and what to leave out. And then on the topic of remote, I've interviewed a lot of people who, when I say, "Why do you want this job?" they'll say, "Because it's remote." That's not really compelling. It is a job after all. You have to show them that you really want this job, not just because it's remote. But on the other hand, if you don't have remote experience, I think that that is okay. A lot of people don't, and it's not necessarily a strike against you. Um, it's mostly being able to communicate effectively, over communicate in some cases, and being able to work independently. So when you're applying for a remote job, craft some stories that show that you have those skills. And then, yeah, like I said, really think about what you can say that's going to make you stand out and show that you're the best candidate. Not only that you're qualified for the job, but you're better than anybody else. And even if you don't believe it, you have to find a way to try to convince them, because everybody has imposter syndrome. It's okay. And related to that, you really have to focus on saying what you want to say that you think is going to help you get the job. These are your talking points. Whether you're a really good leader, you're a really good communicator, you're really empathetic, whatever it is, they're not necessarily going to ask you those questions. You have to find ways to fit those in. Look at how politicians debate or how they talk. They're always hitting up their talking points. They're saying bad things about their rivals, or they're talking about the economy or whatever, even if the question has nothing to do with that. So I'm not saying evade the question, but find ways to say what you think is going to make you stand out. You have to work on marketing yourself and selling yourself in it, especially in an interview. This is a tool that I like. It's called Open Resume. It's not just for creating a resume, but it's an open source project that was created to help you kind of like get score highly in these resume reading systems. So I haven't used it myself, but I think it's a really great idea. And you have to look for a leg up sometimes. So with that is all I have to say. Thank you so much. You can look at my website, which is leon.land, to see the articles and interviews I've done about this topic. There's a link to the Balsamiq website about how we run our business. And then those two other links that I mentioned recently, People First Jobs and Open Resume. And I want to thank you all for your attention.